Washington. And this, as I say, is relevant now. On the 27th of February 2025, the Prime Minister, whilst in Washington, visited the American data and AI company Palantir at its headquarters. The meeting did not appear in the Prime Minister's register of visits. It only came to light later. Now, Palantir, we should remember or remind ourselves, was a client of Global Counsel, the company in which Peter Mandelson had a commanding share. Later that year, Palantir received from this government a £240 million deal.
British companies couldn't compete.
That deal was granted by direct award. Given the allegations now coming to light about Mandelson's conduct, can the Minister assure the House that the Cabinet Secretary will review the circumstances around the award of that contract and assure himself that there are no other such contracts, no other undisclosed meetings, that the government is going to go through all of the communications that Mandelson sent out whilst he was ambassador, messages we must assume, some of which were sent to old business contacts, potential few business contacts, and so on. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knew that Peter Mandelson had maintained an unhealthy relationship with a man who was a convicted paedophile, and he appointed him to the role of ambassador anyway. Everybody in this House should be shocked by it. It must be concluded that had the Prime Minister been pressed on that point at the time, the appointment would not have been made. But the Prime Minister knew, his aides knew, and the appointment was made anyway. What else did he know? Only after this humble address, only if the government treats with it in good faith, will we know that. I very much hope that it is not the case that we find that there are gaps in our security and vetting process. If there are, the government will be able to fix them. But I think it's also likely that we'll see that there were reports that consistently raised concerns that were swept away. And it will then be the duty of the government to disclose who swept them away and why. Ultimate responsibility must rest with the Prime Minister. It is time for him to take responsibility.
I call the Minister to move the amendment. Nick Thomas Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to move the amended motion in the name of the Prime Minister, my name, and indeed the names of right honourable friends. Now, Mr. Speaker, members will be aware that the government came to the House Monday for an update following the release of 3 million pages of documents by the US Department of Justice regarding Jeffrey Epstein. As the government said Monday, and I reiterate now, Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted paedophile and a despicable individual who revelled in abusing the vulnerable and destroyed the lives of countless women and girls. I will give way. I'll complete my introductory remarks, then I will give way to the honourable gentleman. What he did was unforgivable. Every time his crimes are in the public eye, victims must relive their trauma. And his victims are at the forefront of my mind, and I'm sure they're at the forefront of all honourable and right honourable gentlemen and ladies' minds in this debate. And as the Prime Minister has said, anyone with relevant information must come forward and cooperate with investigations so Jeffrey Epstein's victims can get the justice they've been denied for so long. As for Peter Mandelson, his decision to maintain a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, isn't just wrong, it is abhorrent. I did promise to give way.
Stephen Flynn.
I thank the Minister for giving way. I am, however, curious. Earlier we heard the Prime Minister state that he knew that Peter Mandelson had maintained a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Did the Minister also know? And if so, did he express any concerns to the Prime Minister at that time about his decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States of America?
So, Mr. Speaker, on the second point, I played no personal role in the appointment process, but as the Prime Minister said, the depth and extent of Peter Mandelson's relationship was not known at the time of his appointment. As soon as that came to light, the Prime Minister acted decisively and sacked Peter Mandelson. I'll give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way. And given the public disgust and the sickening behaviour of Peter Mandelson and the importance of transparency, in 2022 I proposed a humble address seeking information about PPE, which the party opposite resisted, and my honourable friend, the member for Hackney South, mentioned just before. Should we not have the ISC not have the same role now in keeping public confidence in the process?
Minister.
I'll pick up this point, Mr. Speaker, because I know a number of honourable and right honourable members have raised this. I think, in the first instance, let me say that this process now is going to be conducted and led by the Cabinet Secretary on unimpeachable integrity. And I mean, the right honourable gentleman shouts cover up at the Cabinet Secretary. He really should consider that remark, I think. But secondly, it will be conducted by Cabinet Office lawyers. Now, the House is asking, quite fairly, a broader question, as is my right honourable friend, about scrutiny. There's a role as the chair of the Public Accounts Committee around how Select Committee scrutinise this. There's existing powers for the ISC in terms of scrutinising this. I'm hearing what the House is saying, and I will take that point away. I'll take one more intervention, and I'll come to the right, and then I have to make some progress.
Well, friend, can I say it's disappointing neither the opposition or the government had a reference to the important role that the ISC could have in this basis. Can I say to him, as a member of the Intelligence and Security Committee, I've also spoken to the Chair, the Lord Beamish, and we've heard from the Deputy Chair before, that we feel the Intelligence and Security Committee should be involved in this and help this process, not on behalf of Parliament. So I would urge my right honourable friend to speak to Number 10 to ensure that we get that and that happens quickly.
Minister.
I think I've already said I'll take the point away. I think he knows from our personal dealings on a different matter my respect to the Intelligence and Security Committee and its work. I'll give way to the former Deputy Prime Minister, then I'll have to make some progress.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for giving way. The point here is not about impugning the integrity of the Cabinet Secretary. The point here is about confidence in this House. And I think the temperature in the House seems to be that most people feel that involving the ISC will give both this House and, more importantly, the public confidence about this process. Now, it sounds as if the Minister is sympathetic to this point. Can he just confirm that he is sympathetic at that point and he will be making the case to Downing Street for this tweak?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't accusing the right honourable gentleman of impugning the Cabinet Secretary. The point I was making was that the process is being official-led and indeed then being decided upon by Cabinet Office lawyers. The broader point that the House is making, I can do no more than say I hear what he's saying, and I will take that point away. But can I just come back? I'll give way once more to the chair packer, but I really must make some progress.
I'm grateful to the Minister, and he knows that this House knows that he's an honourable gentleman in every sense of that term. Right. But the mood of the House is very clear, and my right honourable and learned friend has set out, as have others, the role of the ISC and the expectation that it discharges these serious and sensitive matters on behalf of the House, and that the government has confidence. During the course of this debate, can I invite him to go back to Number 10 and to take advice and to not move his amendment this afternoon? I think that would reflect the will of the House and would allow people to start moving these issues forward. To move it today would, I would suggest, be a retrograde step for the government and its reputation.
Minister.
On the first point, as I said to the former Deputy Prime Minister, I'll take the point away. But where I disagree with the right honourable gentleman, and I'll come back to it in a moment, is the importance of the amendment, because there are really important public policy issues I want to deal with in respect of that. But let me just return to the thrust of my... I will give way in a moment. No government minister, let's be clear, of any political party should have behaved in the way Peter Mandelson did, and it was absolutely disgraceful. The alleged leaking of crucial documents to help millionaires profit in the middle of the global crash. Lying to contemporaries, lying to the Prime Minister, lying to the public is both shameful and shameless. So let me just finish this point before I will take some more interventions in a moment. Peter Mandelson will now account for his actions and conduct. That is why the Cabinet Office has referred this matter to the police. And Mr Speaker, the Metropolitan Police have released a statement confirming, and I quote, that they have received a number of reports into alleged misconduct in public office, including a referral from the UK Government. And the statement also confirmed that the Metropolitan Police have started a criminal investigation in relation to potential misconduct in public office offences, and that the police will, I quote, continue to assess all relevant information brought to our attention as part of this investigation and won't be commenting any further at this time. Now, the House will understand that on that particular development, it would not be appropriate for me to comment further, but I'll take one intervention.
Order. We're getting very carried away about the way the Metropolitan Police has been thrown around. I meant to have been contacted. I have not been contacted, neither the House. The House will understand that I am not responsible for the Minister, for the ministerial answers. Let's just put that on the record and let's see if we can tie this up a little bit. For the avoidance of doubt, as I stand, there is an ongoing police investigation into this case. However, no charges have been brought. The House sub judice resolution does not apply. In the context, it is up to the ministers how they reply, but the House rules do not prevent them from answering fully. So please, let's not hide behind that something's not factual. So let's get this on the record, and I still haven't had the phone call.
Could I just say, in respect of that, Mr Speaker, I hear precisely what you say, and I entirely accept that interpretation of the sub judice rules. I'm certainly not hiding behind it, and indeed I will come to some remarks about this in a moment.
Maybe I can help a little bit. But I think the answer was that we can't do this because there's a police investigation. And I think we've got to recognise that is not a reason. So please, let's not play off each other. I've made my point from the chair.
Completely accept that, Mr Speaker. I'll take one intervention here, then I'll take one over here.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I made this point on Monday, but I think it's really, really important to make again. The vast majority of members in this House and the other House come here to represent our constituencies. And I think people across the House would recognise I do my best to represent Harlow as much as I possibly can. Would Mr Speaker, would the Secretary of State agree with me that the reason the case of Peter Mandelson is so damning and upsets so many people across this House is clearly this individual, when he was in this place, and potentially when he was in this place, but certainly when he was in the other place, was not representing the people he was supposed to be representing, but representing instead a vile paedophile. So would he agree with me that the reason strength is so strong across the House is because actually he's letting down all of us?
Minister.
Yes, and the public rightly demands the highest standards from those in office. They demand the highest standards from ministers. We should be held to the highest standards, and my honourable friend is absolutely right. Peter Mandelson fell far, far short of those standards. His behaviour has been revealed to be appalling, and as the Prime Minister has said, we will not...
Order. Please. The Minister is giving way, he will give way, but you can't stay on your feet all shouting, give way, please. Let's give the Minister some time, and he will take you when he feels in the mood to take you. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'll take the honourable member for Bromsgrove, and then I will take an intervention.
I thank the Minister for giving way. Given that at the point immediately prior to Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador, the UK had a respected ambassador already in the United States, and Dame Karen Pierce, why it was that the government decided, given the known abhorrence of both Jeffrey Epstein and the appalling previous judgment of Peter Mandelson, the government still decided that on balance it was a risk worth taking to appoint paedophile-adjacent Peter Mandelson to the post of ambassador.
Well, first of all, Mr Speaker, can I pay tribute to Dame Karen Pierce, who I think represents the finest of our Foreign Service. Secondly, governments do make political appointments to these posts. That's happened. That is long-standing practice to a small number of posts. And the Prime Minister has already said if he knew then what he knew now, Peter Mandelson wouldn't have been anywhere near the government. I will give way to the Chair of Packer, then I will give way to my own friend.
Dame Ben-Hillier.
I'm no longer Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, it seems that we are in something of a muddle here. Had the opposition named the ISC in the humble address, as in the past committees, then there would have been no debate in this House. But would the Minister agree that to put all information openly in the public domain could have risks, but there are well-worn filters through Parliament, through the Select Committee corridor, and there are various committees that could have locus in this space, to properly and sensitively handle information which has, in my time, never leaked from a committee, in order to make sure that we, on the committee corridor, on behalf of Parliament, are holding the government to account. Because I think there is consensus, Mr Speaker, that everybody wants as much information as possible in the public domain so that we can get to the bottom of what has happened in this egregious situation.
My honourable friend is absolutely right about those existing mechanisms of scrutiny, and I give her great credit for the work she does. I've always said on the point that's been raised opposite, I will take it away. I'll give way to my own friend.
Sarah Owen. I thank the Minister for giving way. And on the point of Peter Mandelson letting people down, the people that have been let down most by this are the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And does he agree that we wouldn't be discussing this disgraceful situation if it hadn't been that people didn't listen to the women that came forward in the first place, didn't listen to victims in the first place, and instead listened to men in power, men with deep pockets and men advising those in power? So don't we need to put the victims at the heart of this and not just ourselves?
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and it is the victims, the women and girls who were victims of the trafficking and appalling, abhorrent behaviour of Jeffrey Epstein, who should be at the forefront of our minds. I'll make a bit of progress, then I will give way a few times again. And let me just say, Mr Speaker, not only has the Cabinet Office referred the evidence about Peter Mandelson's time as a minister to the police, but we are also taking action going forward in the Hillsborough law that is before this House to introduce a duty of candour for all public servants that is going to make it an offence to lie to the public, making it a criminal offence to do anything but act with openness and integrity when things go wrong. And that is the action this government is taking to prevent future cover-ups and injustices. A statement of intention that we want to enshrine that capacity to speak truth to power. And as my honourable friend said, the voice of victims being at the forefront, not as in this case a group of powerful men, putting an end to the situation where powerful people are able to avoid justice. Now, the government should rightly be tested and questioned by this House. One moment, I will give way to the honourable gentleman. But the action that is taken by this government is what is crucial now. And earlier this week, the Prime Minister asked the Cabinet Secretary to review all available information regarding Peter Mandelson's contacts with Jeffrey Epstein during his period as a Government Minister and to report back as a matter of urgency. After an initial review of some documents, the Cabinet Secretary made the decision to refer the matter to the police with the Prime Minister's support. And I should say, the Government stands ready to provide any support the police require as part of their investigation. On that note, I will give way to the Father of the House.
Edward Lee, Father of the House.
We're all agreed on the character of Lord Mandelson, but I'm not sure we're going to make much progress if we're just repeating ourselves on that, because we all agree. The reputation of the House is at stake. And what the opposition has to do is hold the Prime Minister to account. Absolutely. Now, I've listened very carefully to the Prime Minister today, the Leader of the Opposition. I listened to the Minister. He's been asked, the Prime Minister has been asked on repeated occasions whether, when this appointment was known, the Prime Minister knew that Mandelson had continued his relationship with Epstein after the first conviction. It's a very direct question. The reputation of the House is at stake. Will the Minister now answer that question?
The Prime Minister answered this to the Prime Minister's questions. He was lied to about the depth and extent of the relationship.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I stand here acutely aware that I am the Member of Parliament for Hartlepool. And I think today I speak for Hartlepoolians when I look at the evidence before us and say undoubtedly that Peter Mandelson is a traitor. And on that basis, it is important that the public have confidence in this process. Would he agree?
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I think the honourable gentleman expresses the anger felt by many across the House in that remark. I'll make some more progress, then I will give way a few times again. No, I will make some more progress, then I will give way again. Now, members will recall, back in September, in light of the additional information in emails written by Peter Mandelson released at the time, the Prime Minister then asked the then Foreign Secretary to withdraw him as ambassador with immediate effect. And the emails released showed that the nature and extent of Peter Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was materially different to that was known at the time of his appointment. The issue over which Peter Mandelson was withdrawn from Washington was information not available at the time when the due diligence was done. And a due diligence process was conducted by the Cabinet Office and a security vetting process, they are different, were carried out. Since entering government, we've already taken action to strengthen the process for making direct appointments for ambassadors specifically and making direct ministerial appointments more generally. I will give way to my honourable friend. I'll come.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. There's clearly concern about the government amendment and that it doesn't go far enough in terms of scrutiny of those documents that might be withheld. Across the House, there is a consensus growing that the Intelligence and Security Committee could provide a way forward for scrutiny of those independent scrutiny of those documents. Is there a possibility that we could have a manuscript amendment to that effect that we can all join together and vote for, so that we can take this serious matter forward?
The manuscript amendment will be a matter for the Chair, and the Chair will be sympathetic to what the House will need to ensure that we get the best.
Well, I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the House always takes me at my word when I say that I will take these matters away. So, the Cabinet Secretary will be taking independent advice on the decisions he is taking through this process. The Cabinet Secretary intends this to take two forms. Firstly, having the advice of an independent KC throughout the process, and secondly, scrutiny of the approach he is taking by the ISC. I hope that will give the House the reassurance that it needs. Now, let me come to. I will in a moment. Let me just make a bit more progress. I will give way again. Let me just take the opposition motion. And I have some experience in the past of drafting humble addresses on different matters in this House myself. Of course, there is an extensive nature to it. I think the House recognises that. It's imperative that the government protects sensitive information that could damage national security or relations with our international partners. I will give way to
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I remember the humble addresses that were tabled in this place during those Brexit years. He will know that in opposition we never felt the need to put national security or international relations on the face of the motion itself, because that was an implied protection. So can I ask the Minister two things? One, he's just said quite helpfully that the ISC will be involved in scrutinising the process. Does he mean the process that the Cabinet Secretary looks at documents, or will they themselves be able to see documents? And I think we all understand what he means by national security, but could he give a definition by what he means by international relations? Because that's quite a broad term. Having some clarity around that would be welcome.
Minister.
Yeah, I think my honourable friend has similar memories of that particular Parliament. But for example, on the motion on Ledbedeff, for example, we included in the motion in a form which may contain redactions, but such redactions may be solely for the purposes of national security. So we did do that. And in terms of the humble addresses that I was involved in drafting, I was very, very precise about it. Before I come to the scope of the motion, I've got two. Yes.
I'm extremely grateful to him for giving way, and I know the Minister takes the role of the ISC very seriously, and I appreciate that he is trying to help the House with what he has just said. However, he will appreciate the difficulty the House has is it needs to decide what to do in relation to the motion before it today. Yeah. Members on both sides will have to decide how they should cast their vote. Yeah. So although there is some reassurance in the Intelligence and Security Committee being involved with the Cabinet Secretary's process, That will not be possible before we have to reach a decision on this motion. The principle here is surely this, that the whole House cannot see everything. I have sympathy with the Minister on this, both in relation to national security material and, rather more sympathy, I'm bound to say, than my colleague on the front bench in relation to material which may be sensitive relating to international relations. But following on from the comments that have been made on his own side, including from the Right Honourable Lady for Hackney and Shoreditch, isn't the answer here that the opposition front bench will accept that its motion will include the concept that if material is sensitive, it is supplied to the ISC only and not to the whole House, but that everything should be disclosed to the House either via that route or via a route to the whole House?
Absolutely.
Beyond the deadline to amend the motion, which is a familiar situation he and I have found himself in before, but what I just want to say very clearly, and I hope the House takes my previous answer on this as good faith, that I have...
The deadline has passed for amendment. Can you just can the Speaker just confirm what you've just said to the House, that you would be sympathetic to a manuscript motion that wouldn't be subject to that deadline?
The Chair is able to select a manuscript amendment, and that will be a high bar, but there is a lot that we need to clear up, and I recognise that I think things can move forward, and I'm sure, just to let you know, the answer is yes, in a nutshell, Minister.
But could I just, I hope that the House takes in good faith what I have sought to do in the course of my speech, let alone the course of the debate. And I think that scrutiny of the process is very important. No. The scope of the motion could also include thousands of documents. It is obviously both in the national interest to protect national security, but also in the national interest to be transparent and act with urgency. I completely accept that. And it is important now we do take time and care balancing those elements. And look, to the government amendment, let me make some progress, I might come back. Look, that's why the government has tabled the amendment it has. For publication of documents unless they prejudice national security. I know I've been asked a specific question about international relations. Because, of course, such documents might contain information about our relationship with our international allies, how we have approached them. That is obviously important for governments to keep, of course, confidential because it's in the national interest. There's also the issue that I am very conscious of not at all hiding behind the cloak of the Met Police investigation. I'm definitely not seeking to do that. But of course, we will also have to bear in mind documents that might prejudice that investigation, and that's something we will continue to speak to the Met about. Now, Mr. Speaker, we will, of course, do all we can to comply with the motion as amended, and we will also update the House accordingly. And indeed, on this moment, I also want to say to the House that whilst that process of going through a significant amount of documents might take a little time, it is also important that the government starts that process of disclosure to the extent it can do today. And that is what the government will do in response to the debate and the very reasonable questions that are being put across. I am someone who rewards effort, and as the honourable gentleman has put in such effort, we'll allow.
Can I return the compliment by just saying to the Minister how much I admire his ability and generosity in giving way. I think he's doing an exceptional job. In relation to the government amendment, Amendment A, I understand where he is coming from, and can I just describe perhaps a thing which he may wish to see pass through the ISC but can't be made publicly available, and that is which of our foreign allies had something to say about the appointment of Peter Mandelson to Washington. I appreciate the Minister is never going to say precisely who that ally might be, but the nature of that correspondence surely is a matter of public interest and therefore of interest to this House, but is not something that can be bruited abroad. So the ISC provides a very obvious solution to discovering what representations were made and what material was passed between our allies and the Cabinet Office before this appointment was made? Can he make that commitment?
Minister.
Well, I hope the House has seen, even in the course of this debate, Mr Speaker, how the constructive approach I've tried to take on the role of the ISC and its role in this process. That's precisely what I've done. I want to turn now to another issue of this matter, which is the peerage. Because another action the government is determined to take is to strip Peter Mandelson of his title, as the Prime Minister has set out. And frankly, I think people watching this will be bemused, because there is no other walk of life where you are unsackable unless a law is passed. So we will introduce primary legislation. The government has written to the chair of the Lords Conduct Committee to ask the Lords to consider what changes are required to modernise the House processes to remove Lords quickly when they brought either House into disrepute. And the government stands ready to support the House in whatever way it is necessary to put any changes in effect. Now, Mr Speaker, being in office is a privilege. It is a privilege. Every day is a privilege, and that is why there is anger across this House about Peter Mandelson and his actions. The test for the government in these circumstances is the action we take to respond. And as I think has also come through this debate, our utmost thoughts are with the victims, the women and girls who suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Behind the emails, the photographs and the documents are many victims who are exposed to this network of abuse. They should be our priority in this matter, and I'm sure they will be for the rest of this debate. Thank you.
The original question was as on the order paper, since when the amendment has been proposed as on the order paper. The question is that the amendment be made. Lisa Smart, Liberal.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. We are having this debate today solely because of the women and girls who found the courage to come forward about the abuse they had endured over years at the hands of rich and powerful men. Without these women's bravery in speaking up about their experiences at the hands of a paedophile sex trafficker and his friends, none of these shocking revelations would have come out. We owe these women justice, and we owe it to them to make changes to create a system that works. I will.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Victims, she is right, should be at the heart of this process. The allegations against someone the Prime Minister and ministers put full trust in is absolutely shocking. Jeffrey Epstein was a sick child predator and a sex offender. He visited Hillsborough Castle on at least one occasion. Does she agree that this House and the government should have a full review of his activities whilst there and an audit of visitors to him during this time? The victims deserve answers.
So I agree with the Honourable Lady's characterisation of some of the individuals we're talking about today. I think we will be supporting the Leader of the Opposition's motion to request the amount of information that is sought, and we would go further. We would look to a public inquiry to look at the detail that I think the victims deserve. The revelations about Peter Mandelson's conduct raise profoundly serious questions about judgment, about national security and about accountability. The leaked emails suggest that while serving as a Cabinet Minister, he shared sensitive government information, sharing details about the 2008 financial crisis, market-sensitive bailout measures and potential asset sales. These allegations point to potential misconduct in public office aimed at helping those involved enrich themselves. They certainly warrant the police investigation that was announced yesterday, but also reveal catastrophic failures in the systems meant to protect our national interest. The emails highlight a fundamental lack of accountability that exists within our current system. The Prime Minister has rightly called Peter Mandelson's conduct a betrayal. He submitted material to the police, requested draft legislation on removing peerages. These responses are necessary, but it has taken the government far too long to get to this position. Mandelson was appointed ambassador to the United States by this government and this Prime Minister, even after his links to Epstein had been extensively reported by the Financial Times and Channel 4 News. I will give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. The Cabinet Secretary, in evidence to the Foreign Affairs Committee after Mandelson had been withdrawn from Washington, said that a summary of the developed vetting and conflict of interest report was given to the Prime Minister prior to Mandelson's appointment, something which the Prime Minister appeared to confirm at the dispatch box earlier. The government and the Prime Minister has repeatedly said that it was the extent of the relationship that changed and somehow altered the appropriateness of his appointment. I wonder what message she thinks it sends to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, to the many victims of rape, of paedophilia, of sexual assault, of sex trafficking, that anyone with a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein should be deemed appropriate to be our representative in Washington.
I completely, Mr. Speaker, I completely agree with my honourable friend. I am not sure what extent of friendship is appropriate with a known convicted sex trafficker to put somebody in our most senior diplomatic position. I will in a minute. I'll make a tiny bit more progress if I may. Channel 4 Dispatches in 2019 interviewed a witness who saw Epstein take a phone call from Mandelson while he was in prison for child sex trafficking. Mandelson asked for a favour to meet the then JP Morgan CEO. All of this information was in the public domain.
I'm grateful that she's made the exact point about it being in the public domain, often from the US. And one of the questions we haven't heard from the government was a request put in to the US to ask whether there are any concerns in the first place, because we know that this relationship was public. We know that it existed. So did the US get asked for any information or any concerns they have? I haven't heard the government explain this point. Has she?
I've been listening as intently as the honourable gentleman has, I'm sure. I think there are so many questions that are right for the government to answer. We believe a public inquiry is the way to get to the bottom of that after any police investigation has concluded. There are questions that swirl around which advisers said what and when. But the decision to hire Mandelson was ultimately the Prime Minister's, and he must be held responsible for that choice.
On that point, will she give way?
Happily.
I thank you for giving way. Earlier, the Minister said that Jeffrey Epstein's crimes were unforgivable. Does she think that the Prime Minister appointing said known paedophile, was that forgivable? Is that forgivable?
I think my honourable friend is referring to the friend of a known paedophile rather than the appointment of a paedophile.
Thank you very much.
Which is an important clarification to make. I think that there are rightly questions surrounding the judgment displayed by the Prime Minister in appointing Peter Mandelson to the position of UK Ambassador to the US. And the questions around that judgment, Mr. Speaker, are wholly valid, as are questions being asked around current Cabinet Ministers who also chose to maintain friendships with Mandelson, with rumours of him popping in and out of some offices at will. And I must say I noted the facial expressions of some on the government front bench during PMQs earlier today. Many questions were raised about Mandelson before his appointment, of course. There were questions raised about him during the 2009 expenses scandal. He was forced to resign from Cabinet twice for unethical behaviour, and we understand the security services raised serious concerns about his appointment last year. Yet he was still appointed to one of our most sensitive diplomatic positions. This is not a case of one unforeseen problem. This is a pattern of warning signs that were ignored. This Labour government promised to break with Conservative chaos, and instead we see the same failures, inadequate checks, reactive crisis management, and an inability, I will in a moment, and an inability to prevent obvious problems. You do not restore public trust with heartfelt apologies after things go wrong. You do it by having proper systems that stop scandals before they happen. Labour has failed to maintain public confidence, and they must do better. I will give it.
I thank honourable for giving way. Obviously, people here want to get to the bottom of accountability in terms of the Prime Minister, other elements within number 10, and of course what Peter Mandelson himself has done. But there is something out there, I think, which is more systemic, and the public understand that this isn't just about a number of rotten apples in the system. It is systemic. It is about wealth and power and access and how they treat young girls and women and us, the public. They take us for mugs. So does she believe that this is wider than just a few bad apples? It is systemic, and that's what needs to be addressed here, and that's what the public wants.
So I wholeheartedly agree with the honourable gentleman. I'm wondering, Mr Speaker, if he's seen ahead in my notes for my remarks about some of the systemic changes we as Liberal Democrats would like to see. I agree with him. This goes far beyond a few bad apples. There are systemic failures in our country that we need to seize this opportunity to address. There are fundamental weaknesses in our system of government, weaknesses that successive administrations have failed to address and which now further threaten public confidence. I'm going to take the urging of the Father of the House to focus on how we make progress from here. We must make reforms to the ministerial code, as it is clearly not functioning as it is. The code exists as a set of rules and principles, acting as guidance for ministers rather than having legal basis. Therefore, ministers who breach it face no legal consequences. When the ministerial code is investigated, even when this is done by independent advisers, the Prime Minister can decide whether to listen to the adviser or not, which means that accountability becomes almost meaningless. And I wonder if, in his winding up remarks, the Minister might consider this and using this troubling episode in our national story as a catalyst for bringing about the much-needed change by enshrining the ministerial code in law. Liberal Democrats believe that to go some way to restore vital public trust in our democracy, we also need to make fundamental reforms to this House and the other place. Members of the government clearly share this sentiment, as we've heard various ministers on the airwaves over the last couple of days saying that the government recognises the urgency of reforming the laws and may bring forward proposals at pace. I'd be grateful if the Minister could lay out further detail of their plans to legislate, especially given growing concern about public trust in our democratic institutions and the integrity of this Parliament. The government holds a substantial majority in this House, and we've seen that they're able to push through legislation rapidly. We saw this only last week with the Medical Training Prioritisation Bill, and the same process could be used to make urgent changes to the other place. Ministers need to set out the legal mechanisms available to suspend or remove a peer, the timetable for any planned legislation, the progress of cross-party discussions that have been mentioned in the press, and how confidence in the upper chamber will be restored. Because without clarification, uncertainty risks further eroding public confidence in Parliament and in our democratic institutions. To the specifics of the motion we're discussing today and the government amendment to it, we Liberal Democrats believe firmly that transparency is vital, and it is the very least the government can do to release the information requested, so we will be supporting the main motion. We would go further. We don't even know the full extent of the British establishment's involvement in Epstein's appalling crimes, or how many British girls and young women were trafficked by him. We are calling for a full public inquiry with the power to compel witnesses, both to get justice for the victims and to protect our national security.
On that point,
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and specifically on the information that's available. Does she share my discomfort with the fact that this information has only become clear for us, but this mass release of information from the Department of Justice in the United States? And whilst I understand the government's reluctance to release information that may well harm international affairs, that doesn't seem to be a concern of the US government.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I think the best disinfectant is often daylight. I am strongly in favour of transparency and welcome it, including the information that's being requested today.
For giving way. I think her point about the wider establishment is important. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Individuals like Sir Richard Branson, who were clearly offering to help Epstein to launder his identity and his reputation by suggesting PR advice on how he might recover from his prosecution. And gentlemen like Bill Gates, whose wife has very bravely spoken out against one of the reasons why she left him due to his links to Epstein. How do we make sure that men like this, who continue to have extreme power, can face some sort of justice on this?
Who's so smart?
She's entirely right to talk about some of the very well-known men, and it is men, wealthy, powerful, greedy men who we are talking about today, who should be held accountable for their actions. The transparency that is sought today is something I think we should all welcome and have in our minds the victims and survivors, and preventing future young girls and women from being victims and survivors of similar crimes. We should do all we can and take that responsibility that we have very seriously indeed. My right honourable friend, the member for Kingston and Surbiton, mentioned earlier in questions to the Prime Minister, and indeed the Shadow Minister mentioned from the dispatch box today, that the Polish government thinks Epstein may have been spying for Putin. The British public and Epstein's victims deserve to know if a UK cabinet minister was leaking secrets not only to a convicted paedophile and sex trafficker, but also a Russian agent. We Liberal Democrats recognise the vital importance of safeguarding national security and genuinely welcome the openness displayed by the Minister in looking at the ISC as a way of getting to the bottom of some of this that he expressed earlier. However, safeguards are already in place to protect national security. These include the National Security Act, which restricts the disclosure of information where this would harm the safety or interests of the UK. And in tabling the amendment they have, including international relations, as a reason to keep secret the information they have, the government is trying to wriggle out of their obligation to the truth, and we will not support it. Willingly.
The Honourable Lady for giving way. I think the transparency point is really important. Peter Mandelson was a Labour politician. This is a Labour government. It may be that Peter Mandelson was an isolated bad apple and really no one knew anything about anything that he was doing until this release of these documents last week. But the public will wonder and they will question, and if a Labour government covers up by being anything less than fully transparent, they will wonder who they're covering up for and why.
Lisa Smart.
I think there have been a series of administrations who have not been as open as they might be, who've made poor choices about the behaviour of some of their members that have ended up in scandal and disgrace. And I completely agree if she's making a point that public trust in our institutions, public trust in our government is vital, and we must all take that very seriously. There is a sorry legacy of recent governments who have behaved less than impeccably in a number of ways. And I think using this whole sorry episode as a catalyst to bring about much needed change is something we would strongly support.
Should we give way? Should we give way?
I will give way and then I will.
Andrew Millis.
Giving way. Now, the Prime Minister has said it's okay because the Cabinet Secretary is going to command this process. Does she agree with me that the Cabinet Secretary is a person of impeccable repute, but whatever he is, he can't be objective because he's been involved in this process. Absolutely. It is almost unfair to put this on him. So what mechanism can she devise that will deal with that, other than give the great bulk of this, because international relations is going to cover the great bulk of this, to the ISC?
Well, he's clearly been reading Liberal Democrat press releases, Mr Speaker, because we believe a public inquiry is a far more effective way of getting to the bottom of this, and I'm delighted that he made that point. I said I'd go to the back and then I'll...
Corbyn.
I thank the member for giving way, and she's making some excellent points. Would she agree with me that all of the inquiry systems that have been discussed so far in this debate are actually influenced or participants in of people who've been within the golden circle of Peter Mandelson in the past? Don't we need something very novel and very different, such as an independent judge-led inquiry or judicially-led inquiry that examines the whole thing in the round in the way that perhaps the Chilcot inquiry looked into the Iraq War?
Lisa Smart.
I'm always delighted to get agreement from across the political spectrum, Mr Speaker, and I very much agree with the right honourable gentleman that an independent judge-led inquiry would be the right way to go.